Good afternoon on a mild, bright and blustery day. It is Friday the 3rd of February and I'm in the reading up with a nice hot cup of tea. And a parcel to unbox. So let's get the knife into this. Okay, just find the... Oh, here we go, on the back. Just going to need to apply the knife because it is very well secured. No doubt the publisher has done a very good job of taping this down. And see, I've got a number of books in here. Okay, let's find out what is in here. And that, I don't know what that is. So first off, what I've got in here is Silver Road. This is a storytelling game by Jon Hodgson. Now I've already done an unboxing of this. This is the hardback. So this is a hardback edition of the softback that I do have. I did review. So what I've got underneath this is this, which is Maskwitches of Forgotten Doggerland, the Silver Road storytelling game of the psychedelic Mesolithic. Maskwitches of Forgotten Doggerland is a psychedelic Mesolithic storytelling game transporting you to Forgotten Doggerland, the territory that now lies drowned beneath the North Sea. Players take on the roles of the Maskwitch, who must use their masks, amulets and witch knives to do battle against the evil spirits spawned by disharmony in their hunter-gatherer communities. Meanwhile, as the ancient glaciers melt and the seas rise, pressure in those communities will inevitably cause more spirits to appear. Powered by the Silver Road, a minimalist experimental storytelling system, Maskwitches of Forgotten Doggerland is suitable for one game mediator and 3 to 4 players. The book contains everything you need to play. Okay, this is published by Handiwork Games. So inside, I mean, this is a lovely format for a role-playing game. I do like big books. There is a certain charm about these smaller books. And you have a fantastic sense of mystery and power there with the first image that you see, prior to actually having an image of essentially the river and the wetlands of Doggerland. And Doggerland, of course, is just a region under the North Sea, which is always been kind of mysterious, because if you had fishing trawlers who would bring up objects from the sea, you didn't know where they came from. They thought they'd be washed in from somewhere else or someone. But you remember, essentially before the last ice age, all that land would have been habitable, and so essentially with the coming of the ice age, it was inundated and became the North Sea. So let's take the contents. And there's the members of essentially the group, the Master Witch. So you have literally in effect, very little necessarily is known about the Doggerland as it was lived in as such. So it's fresh territory for a role-playing game and the player characters to explore. So we get into, we've got the first section here with notes for the reader and a note on cultural appropriation. And it's interesting to note that All the imagery in this book is imagined by the Mid-Journey AI. So there's no, there's no cultural appropriation. None of it is real. None of the objects exist or have ever existed. So there is an explanation of essentially of what the artist fed into to get those responses, and he, this is, I would say, in response to anybody, decrying this as a means of replacing the artist. The author is an artist himself. He's renowned for his contributions to, for example, the to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, and also to the first edition of the One Ring. So, when he's using prompts, he has a trained eye, and therefore probably a greater idea of what he wants to achieve using the Mid-Journey AI. It is a case of, like most people, I'm not in favour of art AI, replacing artists. But, it's interesting to see it used as a tool here and used coherently. So this does include the rules for the Silver Road, which is all there. We've got sample masks and amulets there as inspiration. Essentially, the devices that the characters will be using as their power to fuel their cause against the evil spirits. And we've got a suggested list there, and even more illustrations, which are actually fantastic. They are good. There's no denying them. They have an incredible presence, almost like a museum quality presence. You are almost seeing them behind glass, on display. Here we get into, essentially, we're talking about the story and how to run the game, preparing, playing, the order of play, going through how the process of the game is played, rolling dice, whether or not the Maskwitch is good or bad at a task, and in some ways there is, so there is a lot of repetition in this artwork in the book. That's also present. That's something I don't like, but it is good artwork. It is. So, and then we have, summary of outcomes from undertaken action, and then things like butting in, which is adding a piece, adding an element to the narrative, obstacles that could be faced, and then the consequences of the role, of the action, and its outcome. And we've got an example list of obstacles there that the player characters might encounter. So there's a danger of being hurt, but appropriately, we have an idea here. So some circumstances will allow a player to alter the result of a dice roll by gaining a nap. A nap can be represented by a flint, or pebble, or a token of some kind. And essentially, just interesting how thematically that's used, given how important the skill of napping and chipping flints into tools actually is. And then we have a section of predestined events. So part of the story, certain events could be predestined to happen at certain points, and how they attract. So you have a list of possible events there, like for example, spirit attacks, a thunderstorm breaks, a new location becomes available, and it's a way of tracking the narrative and the player character's progress through that narrative, and then a discussion on scenarios, whether that's using things as a Maskwitch scenario needs, the contribution of the game master, and then And essentially, then we get on to Forgotten Doggerland itself. The setting places a fuzzy dividing line between the real historical place we now call Doggerland and the setting of the game Maskwitches of Forgotten Doggerland. So we've got a timeline based upon history, but also elaborated upon by the events of the Maskwitch period. So we have which is marked here in red. And then we've got the setting of Maskwitch, the land as it is. So the key points here: there are no people. Rarely to see a person of any age over 30, over 25, let alone 30. There's no farms. Life is lived in a rhythm. There's no light, of course, after sunset, so it's dark. Limited storage means no personal hoarding, so possessions are light. No money, no armies, no literacy, no professions, low population. Permanent and impermanent structures are far and few between. No kings, no gods, no concepts of what is real. Time and space are expressed as rhythms. Essentially, and a note on cavemen, or the classic idea of the caveman and the lack of them in the Maskwitches of Doggerland setting. So we have mood setters with a list of prompts and a discussion of the rhythms involved in exploring and playing across this land. Where people live, so cave dwellings, hut materials, put styles, that sort of thing. Ritual centres, tools, beads from Forgotten Doggerland. I mean, they are carved and used as means of exchange, barter, and as decoration, and so on. We have notes on the names and language. Animals that might be encountered, food plants, things people can wear, and then got to the Maskwitches themselves, and how they use the masks, making it possible to swap masks. And again, you have the replication of some of the artwork, and I think here you do have it's enforcing the element of the mask aspect of the game, discussing who the Maskwitches are, potential problems in the land, essentially things that the Maskwitches can go out and solve and find solutions to, how to drive off a spirit, the spirits of the land. And these have a fantastically earthy kind of feel. There is a lack of impermanence to them. There's a lack of permanence to them. That almost not quite ethereal, somewhere between ethereal and actually being there. There is, and essentially a discussion of what the spirits might want. So there's the motivations. Names, and their niches. So you can build a scenario around, a spirit and what it wants, using these prompts. You've quite an extensive list of prompts here, and there are other activities that the witches of the Maskwitches are going to perform as well. So, talking to the community, undertaking a journey, creating a witch knife, making a cave painting, and so on. And there's options here for potential rewards. And these are discussed in detail. And some of these actions are detailed, but also the end point for the journey. crafting and so on. And the other thing to remind us, sort of like Doggerland, is that if you're playing in Doggerland, it's a low-lying area. You would think about what we think about as countries today. You would think, you know, to the west, you would have what would become the British Isles. To the south and east, you would have Europe. They would all, you know, they would be on great rises, not quite mountainous, but hilly terrain, plateaus, if you like. So we've got notes on the activities again, battling spirits. So that adds an interesting environment. You know, if you go to the edge of the world, is those huge embankments which would lead up to the outside of the world. So we've got an example spirit there, which, you know, as the game master can use as inspiration or actually add to her game. And that includes, you know, so we've got full details of that, including the rewards at the end. And it's interesting, essentially, that perhaps here at the end it says, you know, it's entirely up to you whether you play through a series of stories which end in the destruction of the land by climate change. You may find that the method you've chosen to pick up the environmental changes renders the land simply uninhabitable. So you have an endpoint in this campaign. This is, you know, the masks of Forgotten Doggerland are living at the end of their society. And then and again at the end we have more options, but again this is laying the concepts of the Maskwitches of Doggerland over other periods for exploration and encounters. So we're basically looking at you know, Britain to the 1950s and 60s, and we do have books for further inspiration. Again, with this artwork, which is reminiscent, sort of like of, I suppose, the author's. Much of the author's childhood, as much as the likelihood, his gamers are sort of like looking at this, the British society here, taking Maskwitches of Doggerland in another direction, and then we've got a bibliography and more artwork at the back. So that is Maskwitches of Forgotten Doggerland, published by Handiwork Games. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post that. And if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see me out here with a box containing a book or game, which I will unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea. Then please do hit the subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.